Hey guys, we're going to work through some budgeting today and make sure that we know how to properly set up our budget. All of this is flexible. You get a chance to put it together the way that you think it's going to help you best understand how to manage money. But there are a couple of things that you need to know before we get into the numbers. We want to make sure that we start off with a good foundation in order to set up our household well. And so this drawing and this idea is not unique with me, but is something I've seen that's been very helpful in my understanding of how we set up our household. And so we're going to set up our house just like this. And in our pillars right here on the edges are going to be two of the biggest foundations that are going to help us plan for the future and make sure that we use our money well. We have a savings column over here, and we also have a stewardship or giving column over here. These are two of the most foundational elements of wise financial usage that anybody who has done well with money will say are key elements to making sure that you do well and that you set up as one of the initial elements of your budget. Some people wait and they put savings at the very end, and they come to the end of the month and they have no money left to save, and therefore they also don't have any money left to give. So by putting these at the top of your budget at the very beginning, high priorities, you're going to help set yourself up to where you are being generous with your money and where you are helping other people, and also you are paying yourself first. So you can decide what you feel is best to put into these categories and how much you think you need to spend there. I'm going to give you some recommendations based off of the wisdom that has been given to me, as well as some even biblical wise stewardship principles. Now, there's nothing set in stone that you have to use these numbers. You can use whatever you desire to make your budget work, but please consider them. So we're going to begin here with 10% in savings. And if we're putting 10% in savings, we're also going to put 10% into the givings category. So we have now spent 20% of our income, leaving us with 80% to set up the rest of our home and to help pay for all the other expenses that we need. And if we do these things first right here, it's going to provide a solid foundation for whatever may come, whether that be an emergency that we need over here, whether that be retirement, any of those type of things would be taken care of here. So 80%, we're going to break that down into a number of different categories. So one of the most important ones is you need to have some place to live. So your house, I'm going to recommend about 25% of your income goes there to help for your housing expenses. That's a big one because there's so many things involved in that one, which we can unpack another time. After our housing, we also are going to look at our transportation. Many of you are going to want to have a car, whether that is a lease or a buy. We'll talk about that another time. But for the moment, your car is another big expense. I'm going to recommend that you do not overspend here, and maximum put 15% of your income toward a car. That includes all of the things to maintain it. That also includes fuel and insurance and all those things that are going to make your car run on a daily basis. After your car, we're also going to look at food. This is one that may vary based off of your preferences, your tastes, the type of meals that you plan to prepare. But I would, again, put 15% here. This number may fluctuate some depending on the size of your family and depending upon your preferences here. Our next category is going to be entertainment. And for entertainment, I'm going to recommend that you stick underneath 10%. Now again, you can decide how much you want to put here. If you want to raise that to 15, that's fine, but it's got to come out of somewhere else. So maybe you are not going to put as much money in your food budget or not as much in your car budget, but you're going to put more money here into your entertainment budget. That's your call, but you've got to stick with whatever you decide that you're going to do for the beginning. Now, the good news is your budget can always change. You can manipulate that from one month to the next. So if you find that first month your budget's not working, then change some things around. That's okay. But if you start off this way, you're going to need to figure out how to make it work in month one or how to change some things around very quickly. So after entertainment, we're also going to have a clothing budget. And in this one, I would go to 5%. Right? Okay, so I only would need 5% in there. Some of you may need more. But once again, if you take money to put into here, it's going to have to come somewhere else. So if you want to drop your entertainment down to 5%, you want to spend more money on clothing, again, your call, up to you, whatever you want to do there. And then last category is your miscellaneous. These are some of the everyday expenses that don't necessarily fit into a category here, areas where we have extra expenses here or there. I'm going to put 10% here. This can fluctuate as well. You can decide, I don't think I need that much here. Maybe I'm going to take 5% of miscellaneous, put into clothing, or put more into entertainment or food or wherever you want to. That is up to you. This is a starting point. I'm going to recommend that you start here, but you make your budget fit your lifestyle in a way that's going to work for you. One of the key components, though, is to make sure that you pay yourself first and that you be generous first. If you're not generous with a little, you will never be generous if you have a lot. That's just a principle that we see over and over, and the Bible talks about that as well. So be generous and pay yourself first, and then spend the rest of it in these other categories. This will help give you an idea when you want to know how much house can I afford. You look to see how much money you're making. 25% of your budget, don't go over that. Now, there's a lot of things in the house category. So when we get to filling out your budget, you'll see that there's a lot of things you need to consider to make up that 25%. Same thing with each one of these categories. There are subcategories beneath them, but this is a good starting point that'll help you know what can I really afford, how much money should I be putting into those categories based off of what I make. Now, let's switch over here. To our budget page. Now on our budget page, this is the budget that you are going to use for your projects. The budget is completely editable, which means that you can add more columns, you can add more lines in here. You're not going to add more columns because I have one for each month during your project, but you can add more budget items if you want to. You also don't have to use every single one that I have set up for you to begin with. Your initial budget is going to be an educated guess. You're going to begin with a number that you think would work well in each of these categories that you think you'd spend. You're then going to take that to a parent. You're going to look it over with them and look for their feedback so that their life experience can help you improve your budget to get more accurate numbers. In the month of January, you are not going to worry about going out and researching any of the real figures. You'll wait until February when you start doing that, depending on which project you choose. So this budget is the same one that you should be able to find on Canvas and be able to access, download it, and begin working on it yourself. So when you look at each of these categories, you're going to want to adjust the numbers. The numbers I put in here will not work, and I would not recommend keeping these numbers here. I've just showed you what the template looks like. You need to change the numbers in here. Make sure that when you are adding your numbers in, that in the white spaces you have your subcategory numbers, and in the colored in spaces, those are your total expenses for that category. So you'll see I have 100 here and 100 here. That adds up to the 200 that you see right here. So you'll notice that we start off with the giving. We next have saving. We talked about the house principle. Pay yourself first and give first. Have that at the top of your budget there and decide how much you're wanting to put into each of those categories based off of what you're making. Then we have our housing, which I told you there's going to be subcategories that make up that 25%. And once again, if you want to increase that to 30%, that's fine. I would really stress that you try not to go over 30% in your housing budget. That is where I have been advised, and I would recommend that you seek counsel for that as well. Maybe somebody would advise you to go more than 30%, but I probably would not. So in all of those things, you need to know what you're paying for your payment, what your insurance will be, taxes. Now, if you are renting an apartment, you're not going to have to worry about taxes here. You can leave that one empty You probably don't need to worry about repairs either because somebody else will be taking care of that. But you're going to have a payment, you will have insurance. You need to know what it's going to cost you for utilities. Obviously, renting an apartment is going to be less expensive than owning a home. But if you are a family of 4, you need to consider the pros and cons of renting versus owning your own place. Once again, there may be some things that your parents would recommend that you add in here based off of their home ownership and living in this area for a lot longer than I have. So feel free to add things in here if you feel like you need to. Same thing with your car. You have subcategories here, what it costs to maintain and operate your car. This is also based off of having a single car for your family of 4. Now, if you want to have multiple cars, then you should have account for 2 car payments or 2 savings accounts toward a car, depending on which approach you decide to take, as well as insurance on 2 cars, fuel for 2 cars, repair to maintain those 2 cars. And then when you get to the food and household goods category, you may play with this one a little bit and decide that you want to break it up differently. I like to put certain items in here. I like to put my restaurant category in here. Some people like to put that down into their entertainment budget. That's your call. You decide what works best for you. I like to put it in there because it's all food and I know what we're doing. Now, sometimes Mrs. Jones and I, we will go out for dinner and we don't have money here in our grocery budget, but we have money in our entertainment budget, and so we will end up taking money out of there to go out to eat. That's okay. We can change our budget to do that, but the money is still accounted for in here. You decide which categories you want in each main category. And so whatever makes the most sense for you, you can change and modify this. I also put a lot of our household goods in here because often when you go to the grocery store, you buy things like toilet paper or cleaning supplies that you need to run your household. And so I have those included up here in the food and household goods category. Clothing expense, hope you're not spending $1,000 out of your total budget for clothing, but whatever you're spending there, entertainment and miscellaneous. I do not have subcategories here. You are welcome to add them if you want to. That is up to you if you need to keep track of things a little bit more detailed. I have a total down here of what I have spent. Every dollar has a place and I have spent it in this category, in these categories. You are not allowed to leave this empty, and you must spend all $3,500 each month you do these projects. That is your grand total, $3,500, and you need to make account for it. You are going to use this same template each time that you submit a new project. So that's why it has a January column. That's your initial budget you're going to turn to me first. And then you've got February. This is project 1, project 2, project 3, and your final project over here. I want to see how your budget changes, and I want to see what things you do as you build this portfolio. Okay, so if you have any questions, please contact me. Come see me in class. Let me know. This is the basics of how to operate and set up your initial budget for the practical projects.